Welcome to my show. A guest here. His name is Andy Smith. Mr. Andy, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. Very nice to speak to you. Greetings from the UK.
All right, very nice to speak to you, to Mr. Andy. Firstly, you are a recovered alcohol addict. Can you please, Mr. Andy, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mr. Andy?
Yeah, I'm doing great now. I had a lifelong, let's call it a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol, which started in my very early years when I was growing up in the Shetland Islands, which is right off, it's sort of halfway between the UK and Iceland almost. And I grew up in a pub on a small Scottish island, and that kind of formed a fairly unhealthy relationship with alcohol that just, in spite of being a very successful businessman and a dad of three, and otherwise, I think people would look at my life and say, it was going okay, but it was just a massive struggle. I drank very heavily for 37 years from the age of 13 to the age of 50. 58 now. And yeah, it's kind of very interesting to be given a bit of a second chance, it almost feels like.
Completely agree. It's definitely not easy. One of the biggest thing in life is addiction. It just makes someone just go back again and again. It's definitely not easy during that time. We thank God you are doing fine currently. And I would also like to dive to the book you've written, Sober in Seven. Can you please, Mr. Andy, discuss more on that book? And if you are planning to write any book in the coming future, Mr. Andy?
Yeah, so I mean, Sober and Seven is a real kind of, I guess, it's a bit like a roadmap based on my own experience, but also what I've seen other people using to overcome this. Um, it highlights the seven-stage process that I followed because I'd been looking for my answers on this for probably over 10 years. And I tried all the traditional things like going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'd tried hypnotherapy. I'd been to see my doctor, and nobody was really able to help. And I think because there's such a stigma attached to this, it just made me feel completely broken and unfixable. And the irony is that in my professional life, I was an award-winning business coach. I broke records for sales. I was very good at influencing how other people felt about things, and yet I seemed unable to kind of change anything about myself, and or certainly around the alcohol side of things. And I had a kind of a very interesting moment where I'd had a real low point where I had a massive panic attack and collapsed in my local supermarket. And that was, I think, one of those moments where you kind of think, okay, I need to make a change, or I'm not gonna make it. And I remember feeling so utterly helpless and hopeless. But it started off a thought process, I guess, in my subconscious mind. And a few days later, I was running late for a meeting, and I was in my car and I was rushing, trying to get to the motorway. And part of the journey takes me over a railway track, where there's a railway crossing. And as I was approaching the railway crossing again, I was running late. The barriers started to come down because obviously there's a train coming. And for a moment, I nearly floored the accelerator to try and beat the train. And I ended up screeching to a halt, and furious that I was being held up. And there was the Michael Jackson song came on the radio, "The Man in the Mirror." You probably know it. And
Yes.
and I'd heard this song hundreds of times before. And there was just something different that morning where the words just took on a very different meaning to me. And the first line of the chorus where it says, "I'm starting with the man mirror and I'm asking him to change his ways," just had real resonance with me on that day. The fact I was in my car, I was looking at my reflection in the rearview mirror, And I could see this guy, with these bloodshot eyes and the big dark circles under his eyes. And it was that one word, asking. I'm starting with a man in the mirror and I'm asking him to change his ways. And I realized that I'd been kind of going about this all wrong. I'd been beating myself up for years, hating myself for what I was doing and what I was putting my family through. And and I literally asked the question out loud, and I, looked at myself in the mirror and just said, "Are you up for this? Are you willing to do whatever it takes to make this change?" And and it was almost like somebody else answered. The answer just came back, "Yeah, I'll do whatever it takes," and that led me to an interesting kind of journey of self discovery, I suppose. I was, as I say, very good at changing how other people felt about things. I'd done a lot of personal development work on myself. And so I went home, I went and grabbed all of the educational materials that I'd amassed over the years. I put them all in the car and I went to a little lake, which is near where I live. And I just sat there. It was a beautiful environment. And I just thought, okay, the answers are in here somewhere. All of this paperwork that I've got in the car spread out over the seats and the dashboard, the answers are here. I just need to find them. And I just got super focused. And it took me about 3 days to sketch together a process that I could perhaps follow that I knew would work for somebody else, but could it actually work for me? And funnily enough, it has 7 stages to it. So that's what I've highlighted in the book. And the irony for me is that some of these things I had tried myself sort of on an individual basis and they'd not really quite worked. And I think the whole thing was about sculpting it into a journey that I could follow with a start, a middle, and an end point. And over the course of those 3 days, I just felt a massive shift in my sort of feelings. I was starting to challenge some of my own beliefs. I remember going back to my partner Louise and saying, "Oh, you know what? I think something's happened here. Something's changed." And she was kind of skeptical because heard it all before, um, and I couldn't quite explain it. And she was, I guess, in one way hopeful, but also quite fearful as well. And so I just started a voyage of exploration for me where I kind of I started to understand that this all sits in the subconscious mind. This is an emotional journey, and it's not rational. To drink alcohol every day and ruin your health and spend all your money on this stuff that makes you feel miserable, makes you hate yourself, makes no sense whatsoever if you kind of say it out loud like that. And this is the problem, is that a lot of the conventional therapies or methods, whatever you want to call them, are very rational in nature. Well, try and cut down a bit or keep a diary of what you're drinking and things like that. And none of this stuff ever really works unless you actually get into the feelings of it and start to change your belief system. And there's a lot of mindfulness work. There's meditations and things like that in what I do, because if you want to actually shift how you feel and how you believe, what your belief system is, you've got to get down a level. You've got to get into the subconscious. You've got to get into the emotions of it, because that's where the real power is. If you can imagine, if you were looking for a new place to live and you'd got a very specific set of criteria about the house or the apartment that you're looking for, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, does it have parking or a garage or something like that? You would have a very specific set of criteria, and you might find a property that ticks every single one of those boxes. But if you go to that house and go and view it and it doesn't feel right, you will not buy it, because your emotions always take precedence over your rational mind when you get into these kind of decisions. And that's what I learned. And that's when you start to kind of guide people through that process, It's really interesting when you see the shifts. People who've battled this like I did for years and years and years, all of a sudden saying, wow, I feel differently about alcohol. I'm starting to, this thing that I thought was a friend of mine, I'm now seeing it for what it really is. And that's a really interesting journey to go with people on.
Hmm. I completely agree with you, Mr. Handy. It's definitely not easy. That is also the power of music. Sometimes music can just touch someone's heart in any way. It could touch someone's heart to just feel and think about him or herself in more of the positive way. And I thank God that the music really impacted you to get to this point. It's definitely not easy. And I'm glad you've recovered now. You've be stronger now. You're a better person now. And I would like to also go to the daily practice you might be doing. I do not know if there's a daily practice you usually do that also help you so you won't go back to that situation again, or habits that definitely help you to maintain that good health you have currently now and prevent you to not go back to that position, Mr. Andy. I would like to ask if you have any daily practice that you or habits that you think help you or also could help someone to maintain good mental health and
Yeah.
prevent relapse, Mr. Andy?
That's a wonderful question. And actually, you touch on a very important point. This is about small things done consistently rather than, a huge amount of intensity that everybody tends to have when they're setting out on a specific journey. And then that fades over time. It's like, what do you have left? So, in terms of daily practices, um, gratitude is the most underestimated force, I think, on this planet. When you're grateful for things and when you choose to be grateful for the things that are going well, the subconscious mind plays along with that. So, I used to wake up every morning hating myself, criticizing myself. And the thing is, your subconscious mind doesn't discriminate. It doesn't understand whether you're even joking or not. So if you wake up calling yourself a piece of crap or whatever, then your subconscious just goes, okay, I believe you. Whereas if you wake up with a sense of gratitude about things, so for example, if you've not been drinking the night before and you wake up thinking, oh, I feel some relief, I feel grateful, and whatever. If you take a few moments to just internalize that and appreciate what you've done, your subconscious mind goes, oh, okay, that was good, was it? Well, let's do it again. And this is how you reprogram your subconscious mind. So definitely, gratitude is a really key part of it. I think often when people have struggled with addictions, there is sometimes a message in it around you need to learn something new as an alternative. So for me, I used to kid myself that I was drinking to relax, even though I had a panic attack in my local supermarket. So I needed to learn better ways to relax. So a lot of meditation is very important to me. But there's another, I don't know whether you've heard of thought field therapy or emotion free therapy, often referred to as tapping, where you tap on energy meridian points. It's kind of like acupuncture, but without the needles. And it's something you can learn, something you can do to yourself. And it's just the most incredible tool. I studied this under the guy who discovered it, Roger Callahan. And when you learn how to do this, you can start to dial down anxiety.
Mm,
You can start to boost your self belief. It's
okay.
amazing for phobias. But also, where I use it as well is even just things like if you've got a really busy day, if your life is stressful, just while you're going through your schedule and you're looking at it and thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to do all this stuff?
Mm,
I do that now, but I'm tapping at the same time. And what I find is I develop this, what I would call like a quiet sort of determination and resilience to just get through it. Rather than it stressing me out or rather than it feeling overwhelming. And I think the ability to ground yourself, the ability to just come back to a natural state when maybe the world is kind of pushing you in a certain direction, I think is a really powerful gift. So gratitude, meditation, finding tools like tapping, that, these things don't take a lot of time. 5, 10 minutes of your day, and they can fundamentally change how your day is. Because ultimately, again, if you've struggled with an addiction, at some point it is likely that you'll get to that point where you need to make a choice. Do I have a drink or do I not have a drink? And you need to start to stack the deck in your. It's about understanding, what's in it for you. You're viewing this as a positive route rather than a problem that just needs to be solved or tolerated. When you start to kind of get very clear on what's in it for me if I sort this out, how will my life be better, and build some desire around that, again, feelings and emotions, then your subconscious mind starts to go, yeah, well, we could do the drinking thing, but actually, I want that other thing more. And then that choice starts to get easier and easier and easier over time. And the good thing about doing it in that way is the further down the road you get, the closer you start to get to those things actually becoming a reality. So your motivation actually goes up, rather than if you're focused on the problem. It's like if you're, just saying, well, I must stop drinking and I'm not do the drinking thing. Actually, as a few days go by, your motivation starts to drop away. You think, oh, well, I've done really well at the not drinking thing. I'll treat myself and I'll have a drink. And again, none of this stuff makes any sense when you put it in those terms. But this is how your subconscious plays tricks on you if you've got a dependence and an addiction to something.
I completely agree. Gratitude is very, very powerful, Mr. Andy. I thank God. Thank you so much, Mr. Andy. And I would also like to dive lastly to the point of people. I don't know if you have that belief during that time when you were 50 years. It was when you were 50 you started having this recovery. I do not know, maybe you have that belief that I don't think I can get out of this. So some people might be addicted to alcohol today, and they might believe that I don't think I can get out of alcohol. I've been doing this for more than this years. It's not something that I think I could recover from. So I would like to ask if you can say something to someone listening right now that feels like they can never get out to recover from alcohol addiction, Mr. Handy.
So when I went into this, my expectations were very low. I I didn't even want to give up forever and ever. I knew I was killing myself and I wanted to take a break. And I would say that's when I look back on my journey, I think that was a good thing because I didn't get overwhelmed. It was just, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to get myself a bit of emotional distance from this stuff. And then I will make a decision from a position of strength. So don't get overwhelmed. Don't say that you can never do it again right from the outset. Otherwise, it just becomes forbidden fruit and you want it more. So, focus on, get some books, go and take some action, do some research on Google, start to entertain the prospect that you will get past this. You don't have to believe it right now. When I was kind of looking at this, I had basically two goals. One was don't die, and the other one was don't get thrown out of the house because my partner's got sick of me and the drinking, and that was it. And over time, I've gone on to do some quite extraordinary things. I was deeply unhealthy when I was drinking. I've gone on to ride the course of the Tour de France for a children's charity. I have ridden my bike up Mount Everest to base camp. A few weeks ago, I was riding across the snow in the Arctic. And I do lots of things now for charity, particularly kids' charities, because it's a bit of an antidote to how much I used to hate myself. I feel quite good when I do this kind of stuff. I feel like I'm doing some good in the world, and I help people obviously with addiction as well. And it's kind of reprioritizing that and starting to look after myself. But I would say most of the people that I speak to when I'm having an initial conversation with them on the phone, we're in a situation where I believe in them more than they do because I get to see people getting over this all the time. And no matter how dark it seems, it's it is possible for anybody to get over this. The key thing is to find the thing that is right for you. For example, Alcoholics Anonymous was absolutely not the right thing for me. I it made no sense to me, and I just thought this is awful. But some people love it, and the key thing is to start doing your research. Just do little things and try not to put yourself under too much pressure. Yeah, because it all just starts with a little bit of hope. Well, again, one of the reasons why I do all these sort of challenges and things is I want the people just to, look at me and go, okay, this guy has gone from a very dark place to doing all these nice things now. Because I want to compete against the narrative that is out there that, if you don't drink, your life somehow gets worse. And my experience is that it's the direct opposite. Your life just gets better and better and better. And so I want to kind of, I guess, stand against that kind of tide of information that, and people will say, oh, you're not drinking, you're going to be boring now, are you? And it's like, there's nothing more boring than a drunk person trying to tell you they're not boring, And so this whole thing, it's a kind of I talk about it's a journey. And it's like when I came up with the 7-step process, some of it I had done before, but I'd never turned it into a journey that I could follow. For example, when I was on the Tour de France, there was a guy that got up every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning and signposted the route for the day. So he would go and put these yellow arrows on the lampposts. So if you came up to an intersection or a roundabout and the arrow said go straight, you just went straight. You didn't question it or get your phone out and check on Google Maps or anything. You just trusted him. And I think that was such a metaphor for this is follow the yellow arrows. Quite often that is your gut and your intuition going, you know what? I think there's something in this. And in those inevitable days when you feel like you can barely go on, and I had those, riding the Tour de France, 21 days, 3,500 kilometers over, the mountains of the Alps and the Pyrenees. There were days, and I was warned about this before. There was a guy said to me, he said, there will be days that you wake up and you'll just say to yourself, I can't do this. And he said, you will just want to cry all day. And it was true. There were days like that. But on those days when you didn't feel like you could go on, it was, okay, what is my job? Again, simple little things. It's like, I'm going to get on my bike, I'm going to turn the pedals, and I'm going to follow the yellow arrows. And that's it. That's all I'm going to think about today. And I knew that if I did that, every 40 kilometers or so, I would get fed and get my water bottles topped up. And if I continued to the end of the day, there would be a bed for the night and I could rest, and then I would go again tomorrow. And it was just such a wonderful comfort to have some structure and some signposts. And, to give a kind of I suppose, a juxtaposition to that. And when I was in Norway a few weeks ago, and I'm riding in the dark in a blizzard, 120-kilometer-an-hour winds, I kept getting blown over on my bike. And then my GPS failed and I was stuck in nearly waist deep snow, with the snow swirling around me. All I've got is the light that's on my bike and on my helmet, and I can't see a thing. That is terrifying because I just thought, well, am I going to wander off a cliff here or whatever? And I turned and I looked back and I could see my footprints where I'd come from. But then they were starting to fill in as the snow was blowing around and it was starting to to fill them in. So I had to make a decision quite quickly that if I was going to retrace my steps, then I needed to get on with it. And I think, I would have killed for some yellow arrows in that kind of situation. But it just shows you that when you're doing something that is really challenging for you, to have something to light the way, whether it's a 7 stage process about, getting sober or whatever, it makes all the difference because it takes the pressure off and you can just kind of focus on you rather than thinking too much about, well, what comes next and then what comes after that. At least you've got a process you can trust.
Completely agree. Thank you so much, Mr. Handy. Anybody can recover from an alcohol addiction, no matter how you've done, no matter the years you've spent.
100%.
Anyone can
Yeah.
recover from it. Thank you so much, Mr. Handy. Mr. Handy, there's a question I normally ask during the end of the show. From our forefathers, from our fathers who have passed on to the next glory, there are a lot of things that do exist during our forefathers' time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mr. Andy, what do you think that will be, Mr. Handy?
Oh, what a wonderful question. I think I think just the wonderful simplicity of family and creating an environment where that is kind of cherished almost above all else. Because in the final analysis, I think life is just about how much you love and how much you are loved. And for me, family is a big part of that. I'm a real family man. I love my kids. I love my partner, and everything else is kind of secondary. So I think it was easier to do that many years ago. The life was simpler then. And I think life's really complicated now, and we're very disconnected.
Completely agree. Life is really, really terrible now. Family is one of the greatest thing one can have. Family brings this sense of love and hope within one another. And well, we hope, technology has really, tarnished a lot of things, but we hope in the coming future we could get this sense of family. It's very, very important in one's life today. And I also want to sincerely thank you for the opportunity, for the time you've given me. And I'm also glad that you've recovered. You're strong. You're doing fine today. And I also want to encourage every single person, anyone can recover from this, like you heard from Mr. Andy. Thank you so much, Mr. Andy.
Bless you, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share this stuff. It's important.
All
Thank
right,
you.
sir. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Andy. Bye bye.
Bye.